Have you ever heard someone use the phrase that they poured their blood, sweat, and tears into something? That phrase is often associated with great sacrifice. For example, when my family moved to Canada, my mom had to sacrifice a lot. She left behind her mom and dad. She had to learn a new language. She had to go back to school, all the while still doing her best to provide for my sister and I. When we moved to Canada, after learning English, she had to go back to school and learn a new profession. She went back to nursing school. I remember her coming home from her jobs. She would cook us dinner, prepare, wash the dishes, do the laundry, and then go into her room and study for hours before she had to repeat that yet again. I remember there were times when she cried and she wanted to give up. She didn't think she was going to make it. Yet, she graduated at the top of her class in nursing school and landed a nursing position, which she still has to this day as she's approaching retirement. I think it's safe to say that without my mom's sacrifice, my sister and I would not have the childhood that we had growing up in Canada, nor would we be where we are today. My mom definitely sacrificed a lot, and she is most certainly one of my great heroes. This Sunday, Catholics celebrate the feast of Corpus Christi, the body and blood of Christ. In Corpus Christi, we as Catholics, we remember that Christ literally poured out his blood, sweat, and tears for us. He gave the greatest sacrifice of all. But hold on a moment, you might be thinking, okay, but what does that actually mean? We as Christians, we hear that phrase all the time, that Christ died for us, that Christ died for us so that we may have eternal life. But what does that actually mean? I mean, if you're a little bit skeptical, you might be thinking, well, what impact does the death of some Jewish guy 2,000 years ago have on my life today? And moreover, even if Jesus was God, I didn't ask him to die for me. So how does that impact my life today? If you look around the world today, do you think that humans are deserving of heaven, eternity with God? I mean, if I was God, which I'm not, thankfully, I would want to throw in the towel and give up on humanity. I think humans, as we are more deserving of hell than of heaven. And there's nothing that we, by our own power, can do to earn heaven ourselves. St. Paul writes in Romans 3:23 that we have all fallen short of the glory of God. So then if we can't pay the price for our sin, who can pay the price? Justice has to be served. I mean, we don't just get out of jail free card. And this is when Jesus Christ comes in. Though he was without sin because he is God, he himself gave himself as the perfect sacrifice or the perfect price for the sins of humanity. He substituted himself so that he can take on the justice that we deserve. And because of this perfect sacrifice, we have the opportunity to spend eternity with God in heaven. This is why for us as Catholics, the sacrifice of the Mass is so important. At every Mass, we as Catholics, we represent Christ's sacrifice on the cross on the altar by using the signs of bread and wine. We believe that at one point in the Mass, that this bread and wine, it transforms into the resurrected body and blood of Christ, which then we use to represent the sacrifice of Christ on Calvary 2,000 years ago. So it's not a whole new sacrifice, but rather it's the representation of that original sacrifice that already took place. Because that one sacrifice is enough. We don't need to offer new sacrifices every time. So it's that original sacrifice represented again at every Mass through the signs of bread and wine that then become Christ's resurrected body and blood. And it's for this reason that Corpus Christi is so important for all Catholics, and arguably it should be important for all Christians around the world.